Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, July 22nd. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 42 days, the game against Michigan in 128 days. Thanks to everyone who helped fill in while I was on vacation in Monte Carlo, the Lego Museum, the Train Wreck Museum, and a whole bunch of other places over the last week or so. But now it's time to start the ramp up to the 2021 college football season. That begins today in Indianapolis at the first of two Big Ten Media Days. Buckeye Scoop beat reporter Tony Gerdeman will be one of the people from our staff joining me at Lucas Oil Stadium for the event. Tony, while the start of the season is still more than a month away, to me, this always kind of feels like the end of the full-blown offseason.
Absolutely. And first, Tom, let me welcome you back on behalf of myself and all of the listeners, but most especially on behalf of the people who had to fill in for you. Welcome back. Please don't ever leave again.
I'll do my best.
And then now back to media days. Yeah, this is the start of it. This is where the season begins because it's like there's content and there's stuff to write about and there's stuff to talk about because you go through this for 2 days, and you have over an hour with Ryan Day, an hour with 3 different players. And now you've got basically a week between the end of media days and the start of camp. So there's a whole bunch of stuff moving. And then once you get to camp, it's a daily thing. And so, yeah, it was a nice summer, but now summer is over.
Well, most conferences do a media poll at their Conference and Media Days event to have people predict the standings for that season. For whatever reason, the Big Ten doesn't do that. So our friends at Cleveland.com just do it themselves every year. They polled 34 media members from across the league. Tony, I'm sure this will come as a shock to you. All 34 people think Ohio State is not only going to win the East, but win the league title game as well. On a scale of 1 to 17.5, how shocking is that to you?
I'm at least a little surprised that there wasn't one person saying Wisconsin over Ohio State, because we've seen Ohio State struggle in the Big Ten championship game until they turn it on. But they've been in some close games. Sometimes their closest games come in that one. So I'm not surprised that the overwhelming majority chose Ohio State, but I am slightly surprised that there wasn't just one person who was looking to, I'm the guy, because that's kind of what media members, some of them like to do. They like to be like, look at me, look what I've done. I have chosen Northwestern.
As the only person to have predicted Ohio State to lose a football game in the Buckeye Sports Bulletin media poll last year, I don't know what you could possibly be talking about. Ohio State being picked first, not a big surprise, but I will let you instead tell me which of these predictions from the East was the biggest surprise to you. Okay, Ohio State first, we talked about. Penn State second, Indiana third, Michigan fourth, Maryland fifth, Rutgers sixth, Michigan State seventh. Do any of those kind of jump out to you on that side of the league?
They don't, because that's pretty much in line with what the magazines have said, and those didn't seem out of line. I think one of the things I saw from that poll that was interesting to me is Rutgers was picked anywhere from third to seventh in the division. So the fact that you've got some people picking Rutgers to be third is interesting to me. I think that is more outrageous, or maybe a bolder thing than saying Wisconsin will beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That's why I'm surprised that there weren't some outliers there. But the Rutgers being third, Tom, while possible, that to me, that's, and again, not they didn't all pick Rutgers to be third, but that was like of that group, that was the most surprising thing that caught my eye. Is that there's some people out there that think Rutgers could finish ahead of Indiana and Michigan.
Yeah, Rutgers third is a little aggressive. I think we talked about them on one of the Buckeye Weekly shows we did a couple weeks ago about Rutgers potentially maybe being a bowl team. That's not crazy, but yeah, third in the East, that would be, Shiano definitely has them on the right track. That would be pretty aggressive though, because there's some pretty good teams in the East. I was a little surprised to see Michigan State seventh, but there isn't really a team that you look at and you go, that is definitely the seventh place team. There is in the West, and we'll get to that in a second. But I don't think there's one that just jumps out to me as like very clearly this is the team that is going to finish last in the East. Everyone kind of has something going for them this year, so someone has to be last. I guess that's Michigan State. Other side of the league, Wisconsin got 29 of the 34 first place votes. It was probably a little more than I would have expected, but I mean, that's probably who I would have picked. Iowa got the other 5. That's who I probably would have picked to finish second. Behind them, Northwestern in third, Minnesota in fourth, Nebraska fifth, Purdue sixth, Illinois in seventh. That is the correct answer, Illinois in seventh. Does anything jump out to you from the Western side of the league at all?
Just a sheer number of Wisconsin picks. Maybe a 20-14 might have been a little bit more, or 22-12, something like that. But 29-5 is, I'll use your word, I think it's a little aggressive. And while I think my positional rankings are probably heading towards Wisconsin being the pick in the West, the fact that I think other teams have a puncher's chance, or at least I don't know if you want to call them punchers, maybe a grabber's chance, or a grab and holder's chance type of thing in the West, where can Iowa? I mean, if Iowa beats Wisconsin, now the Badgers have to win by 2 games in a division. So there's some things like that where I think there's some question, but I would go Wisconsin. So I guess I can't complain too much if everybody else does, or a bunch of other people do as well.
Yeah, Wisconsin and Iowa are pretty clearly, to me, the top 2 teams in that division. Northwestern third is probably higher than I would have them. They lost a decent chunk off their team last year. I've already done the Northwestern season preview with Daniel Ollinger of InsideNU.com. You can go back to early June and find that one if you want to get some more details on Northwestern. But yeah, that seemed a little high for them. Maybe behind Minnesota, maybe behind Nebraska. Purdue in sixth, like that wouldn't be great for Jeff Brom's job status. That would not be what he's looking for. And they've got some talent there. I mean, you've got David Bell as a wide receiver. You've got what's his name, the defensive end, who's pretty high on the defensive player of the year. I mean, there is some talent there. Them in sixth, that would be a little surprising to me as well. And one more thing that jumped out to me: Chris Olave picked as the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. He's obviously the big name. You kind of, okay, like, yeah, he's the biggest name, so okay, sure. But if he does it, he would be the first Big Ten receiver to win that award since, Tony, do you know the last Big Ten wide receiver to win the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year award?
Oh, if you would have given me more time to answer this and ability to look it up, it was not Rondale Moore. Is there a Minnesota receiver? Go ahead, tell me, Tom.
I will give you a hint. The guy who won it the year after this guy was Brett Bazinet.
Lee Evans?
Close. Almost.
Dwayne Bates? Go ahead and tell me.
Incorrect. Braylon Edwards, 2004.
Wow.
Yeah, that pretty much always goes to an Ohio State quarterback at this point. And if it doesn't, the couple times recently it didn't. It was either a Wisconsin running back or a Penn State running back named Saquon Barkley. So a wide receiver winning that award would be pretty surprising, but Olave is kind of the type of guy who tends to win that award preseason because he's the big name. Honestly, it's probably more likely it's CJ Stroud than Chris Olave when they do the postseason awards, but we'll get there in December. Northwestern safety Brandon Joseph was the pick for the Defensive Player of the Year. Interesting to me, Aiden Hutchinson was the only Michigan player to get a single vote as a potential offensive or defensive player of the year. 6 Buckeyes were named on at least one ballot, 3 on each side of the ball. I'm going to give you the 6 guys who were named, and then you can tell me who you're most surprised to not see on this list. Olave, Garrett Wilson, CJ Stroud, Haskell Garrett, Zach Harrison, Sevin Banks. Who else should be on there with them?
Oof. A quarterback. I don't care if you have to guess.
CJ Stroud was on that list.
Okay. Well, you give me 6 names. I mean, that's a lot to remember. It is interesting that Master Teague isn't, and that it's not just the Ohio State media side that is looking past him. But there's a lot of new starters. So Jeremy Ruckert, maybe, but are you really going to quibble with somebody not putting an Ohio State tight end in some sort of a preseason accolade list? That's probably the 6th I would have go. Did you say Thayer Munford or Nicholas Petit-Frere?
I did not say Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere. Those are good. Those are good answers. I did not go back and look at how often an offensive lineman has won that award. I'm guessing based on the fact that it's media voting, the answer is probably not very often. So realistically, that's probably not going to be, but could very well end up being the MVP of the league. That's whether he's awarded with that award or not. Yeah, Thayer Munford or Nick Petit-Frere, good answer there. And we will have complete coverage of Big Ten Media Days at BuckeyeScoop.com throughout the day today. As usual, they have Michigan and Ohio State on different days. So Thursday is Michigan. That means the headliner is probably Michigan's Jim Harbaugh. Tony, what would you be most interested in hearing a really honest answer from Harbaugh about today?
Boy, that's a good question, because I don't even think of him in terms of being able to give an honest answer. So it's like, like, what flavor of candy bar do you want this fire hose to give you? And you're like, but fire hoses don't give candy bars. So I've got to, reprocess something. It would be interesting to hear about, the pressure that he's feeling. Would he actually get into that? And how do you go about not ignoring it, but maybe attacking it and doing away with it through success? Like, what are you doing to beat Ohio State today? That sort of thing. Like, they have it in the building. So what are you doing? Because if you beat Ohio State, then you'll get plenty of stress relief. But also, it's not just about beating Ohio State. It's also beating Michigan State, because you didn't do that and you've struggled to do that. You don't even compete against Wisconsin. You barely get by Rutgers, and that's your team's biggest win. So there's, I guess, how do you turn it around? And does that mean, would he even acknowledge that there's something to turn around? Like, what do you mean? We're Michigan. It's like, but wouldn't you like to be better than that? And so how do you get there? I guess maybe that's, as I talk all of this through, maybe like, yeah, how do you turn it around? Do you have the capability of turning it around?
I would love to know what constitutes success this fall. What makes a successful season? That is the get some truth serum in him. And does he say they have to beat Ohio State for it to be a good season? Can they go 9-3 and have a competitive loss to Ohio State, and that is an okay season? Like, what actually constitutes success for them? And is there a successful season that he still isn't back next year, or is there an unsuccessful season where he still might go? He might be back without a successful season or whatever. That would be interesting to me, because I don't know the answer to that. I feel like they've got to probably go 9-3 and at least be competitive with Ohio State for people to feel decent about it. But I don't know if that's necessarily enough to keep his job. And I don't know if I see 9 wins on that schedule, which is probably a bigger issue. The other teams featured today include Minnesota, Maryland, Nebraska, Illinois, Penn State, and Northwestern. Is there one or two people who you are most intrigued to talk to out of those teams? And if so, what are you most interested in asking them about?
I'm interested in talking to the coaches about an expanded playoff and what they feel about it, because in the Big Ten, you're pretty much stuck behind Ohio State. And not that they would ever say that, like, well, we know our spot is going to go to Ohio State, but an expanded playoff program would give them access to something that they didn't necessarily have before. So you hear so many concerns. I think Dabo came out recently, and we don't like it. And of course you don't, because you don't want to make the road any more difficult. But for the 120 other programs who don't have an opportunity to make the playoffs, I would like to know from their coaches, like, does Scott Frost like it? Does Kirk Ferentz? Well, he probably doesn't like it just because he's Kirk Ferentz, and it's like, that's not what we did in 1986. And we shouldn't be doing that in 2018 right now. And then you're like, Kirk, it's 2021. And then he'll look at his watch and he'll be like, oh, are you sure it's not 2019? But I'm just interested to find out from the coaches, like, where are you on the playoff expansion? Are you for it? Is James Franklin for it? And does he see, because he's famously a couple of years ago said, we're not elite. We're not elite like Ohio State. Now you don't have to be elite like Ohio State, and you can maybe still make the playoffs once that expansion kicks in. So how does he feel about that? That's kind of what, I don't know if it's anything immediate, but right now, as I'm kicking around ideas to talk about, that's one of them on my mind.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone who could potentially benefit more from an expanded playoff field than Penn State, at least among the Big Ten. Penn State or Wisconsin, who are kind of typically in that 9 to 10-ish range in the polls at the end of the season. All of a sudden, that's good enough to make the playoff if they go to a 12-team playoff. So I would bet James Franklin is strongly in favor of playoff expansion. That would be my personal guess, but we'll talk to him a little later on today and find out. I'm really intrigued to talk to the Big Ten's director of officiating, who is he's going to be talking a little later on this afternoon. I just want to know, like, what are the points of emphasis? Because those are the things, like, That's a really pedantic, like boring thing. And it's like, yes, but when you're watching football this fall, and all of a sudden, I wouldn't know, are they going to start calling illegal man downfield? Because that's something that you hear every defensive coach complaining about, that, you get these RPOs as a lineman 5 yards downfield, and the rule says he's not supposed to be 5 yards downfield. Are they going to start calling that? Are they going to have, changes to targeting rules have been a thing in the past? Like that kind of stuff. The points of emphasis in officiating is one of the really boring, pedantic things that you will end up throwing your remote at the TV about at some point this fall. So that's always good to know in advance. So that we will have a full recap of today's interviews on the Buckeye Weekly podcast a little later on Thursday. We'll probably do an abbreviated recap as well as a preview of Friday's interviews on tomorrow's Morning Scoop. So you have all of that to look forward to, which means this would be a great time to subscribe to the Morning Scoop, which obviously you're probably already listening to if you're hearing this. That's how this works. But subscribe to Buckeye Weekly as well. And you can find those and all of the great podcasts from the Buckeye Scoop Podcast Network by just searching Buckeye Scoop on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. You can subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help other folks find those shows as well. I'm guessing we will probably also be doing a good bit of live streaming of interviews at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. We'll have a ton of coverage there. If you subscribe there, just hit that little bell icon, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop, and you'll get notified every time we post a new video, every time we go live with a new interview. You'll be able to get that all there. That's all free. All you have to do is subscribe at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.